All right, we are going to go ahead and get started and invite you all to just settle in. We'll settle in very briefly, but we'll settle in with a body scan. So before I do that, I am going to share affirmation. So this affirmation for today is based on the idea of healing and joy. So the affirmation says, I may be healing, but I still deserve joy. And this is so true. So let's begin. Close your eyes or soften your gaze and take a deep breath in through your nose and allow yourself to fully exhale, emptying all the way out. Bring your awareness to your feet, and we're going to do a body scan from our feet to the top of our head. Starting with our feet, if you want to go ahead and curl them up and just feel the tightness and the tension and allow yourself to hold that for a moment and then release, feeling the difference between the tension and when you release. Bring your attention or your awareness up to your thighs. And I invite you to squeeze your thighs together and hold it for a moment. Allow yourself to feel that tension with the tightness. And now go ahead and release, allowing yourself to feel the difference between the tension and the release. Bring your attention to your behind, your butt cheeks, and go ahead and squeeze your butt together. And allow yourself to feel that tension for a moment as you hold it. And then go ahead and release. Bring your attention to your stomach and maybe tense your stomach, bringing your stomach, drawing it back to your navel back towards your back, and allow yourself to feel the tension as you hold that for just a moment. And now go ahead and release. Bring your attention to your hands and squeeze them like ball of fists up. Hold it for a second. And then release, allowing yourself to notice the difference between the tension and the way it feels when you release. Next, we're going to focus on our shoulders and just drawing your shoulders up towards your ears and maybe tightening just a little bit so you can feel the tension. Notice how that feels. And then allow yourself to let your shoulders fall and release. And just allow yourself to notice the difference between the tension and the release. And now we're going to bring our attention to our face and just scrunch it up like you're mad. I'm mad about something. And just feel that tension for just a few seconds. And now go ahead and release. I'm going to end this body scan with a deep breath, a community breath, in through our nose and out through our mouth. And just allow yourself to fully relax and settle in to your chair or your seat, wherever you're seating. If you need to rotate your shoulders or your wrists, do so, whatever feels comfortable. And then I invite you to come back to the screen, open your eyes and come back to the screen. I hope that was good for you to get grounded and get settled into our conversation for today. I do invite you to, if you have went and got a beverage of choice, whether it's tea or something else, I'm going to invite you to take a mindful sip with me. So I am going to take a sip. And as you take a sip, if you have tea, just notice the warmth of the tea, how it feels in your hands, how it feels going down your throat. And also maybe think about what flavors you are finding in your tea, and can you identify those different flavors in your tea blend? Today we are doing another Buddha tea. I am doing the hibiscus tea. Um, Cherita, what tea did you decide to take today? You're muted.
I decided to grab some mint out the garden.
Mm.
And that's which is my my favorite. I love a mint tea, so
Mm-hmm. Yes, nice, nice, nice. So, tea is always I love a good tea. It can be so relaxing. I just love to, kind of take in the warmth of that tea and think about how that feels and how soothing it is and just how relaxing. And then, you take all the aroma and just as you're taking it mindfully and slowly, it's a time to just kind of pause and allow yourself to relax. It's an invitation to sip and rest and reset. So I hope that you will take this time today as this opportunity to sip and relax. Join us in the conversation and then reset. So, as you are sipping your tea, you might ask yourself, what would it be? What it mean to sip joyfully for the week? And allow that question to seep into you as we continue to our conversation today. So today we are going to talk a little bit. I have my guests here, Cherita Tousson Bowens. And she is a friend of mine. We've been friends for a long time, a long, long time. I think we were saying something like 30 years. It's been a very long time. And so I called on Cherita because when I think of joy, I think of Cherita. And she is one of the people who's always got a joyful spirit and joyful personality, but life hits, right? And so life hit you hard almost a couple of years ago. And so I entitled this, find reclaiming joy when life throws boulders, right? And so life threw you a boulder. You lost your husband, you know, unexpectedly. There was nothing, this is a total unexpected moment that happened, and then your life was turned upside down. And I know that you have been working your way back to finding your joy. And so that is what we want to talk a little bit about today, what it means to find joy. Do you want to add anything on about before we get started?
well, I mean, you said it nicely. We when she says unexpectedly, Mark was diagnosed, but they gave him a time stamp and God took him in half of that time. So I wasn't ready for this, and so when things like this happen, it paralyzed me, and one of the things that when you talk about finding joy, I just want to add without the guilt, to say it's okay to move, but I've been stuck in such a concrete, barrier right now because I'm trying to get to that without feeling guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Both
without
options.
feeling guilty and recognizing that it actually may look a little different than what it looked like before, because your life is different now. The one thing about loss is that it often requires so many changes, and so we want to go back often to what it looked like before, but sometimes you can anticipate that it might look different. And so that is something to just keep in the back of your mind, that it could look different. So, you know, so we'll get into our talk. Just for those of you all who don't know me, my name is Toyia Miller Peters. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a therapist. I am the founder of Restore Her Wellness, which is a platform dedicated to uplifting and encouraging women of color, and particularly, but women of all races, really to just be intentional about their wellness, intentional about their self care. And so joy is part of, your wellness. Joy is part of self care. And so being able to find joy and reclaim it, especially when life throws boulders. So I just want to give a little bit of background for today. We are talking about grief. And so I want to, really just kind of be very clear about that, so that, everyone is clear what we're talking about. But we're talking about in terms of loss. There could be a number of different losses. And so what does that look like? And so we'll talk a little bit about loss in its totality, but we'll specifically also talk about grief. So grief is layered, and it's not fluid. It's like a roller coaster. You find yourself on ups and downs, highs and lows, and so that is something that it can be challenging for people, because people feel like, sometimes I think I'm over it and I'm good. Well, what does it mean to be over it? Can you really be over grief? I often tell people, don't expect to be over it. Expect to maybe move through it, but not to just be over it, because you lost something that was important to you. And what does that look like? So say it's not just about loss of a loved one. It can be loss of identity, loss of safety, loss of purpose, routine, connection, or a dream deferred. And I can say that, as we're talking today, about grief for me, talking about myself, I'm going to be talking more. I have experienced grief, and I've become very intimate with grief from a very young age, and also talking about the dream deferred. What that also means in terms of loss for me as well. Um, it can be a break away from what life used to feel like. So, Cherita, when I was talking about things being different, it used to feel a certain way, but now I'm sure life feels very different. Who would, I don't know about anyone here. Can anyone relate to the fact that if there is an experience of grief, that just life just feels different afterwards? And if that resonates with you, maybe give us a thumbs up or a heart, or feel free to come off and just, share that with us. Yes. Thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, Joy and grief can coexist. So I want to also mention that. So we don't reclaim joy after grief. We want to reclaim joy in the midst of grief. Joy doesn't erase the pain. It offers us a moment of light while we carry the weight. And, honestly, this may be more weight than we want to carry sometimes, but we need to try to see if we can find glimmers or pockets of light to kind of help us move through, the moments that we're moving through. Every day is going to be different. Every moment can very well be different, and no one has the right to tell you how to grieve. And so that is also, something to make sure that we're taking note of, is that your grief is your own journey. It is very individual, and so what one person experiences, don't compare your experience to the next person, because this is your own personal experience. um Joy is resistance. For Black women, especially, joy is an act of spiritual and emotional liberation. So, society often demands strength at the cost of softness. Reclaiming joy says, I am more than what I have survived. Can I get an amen on that? I'm going to repeat that just to make sure you all heard that. I am more than what I've survived. So, I don't know about you all, but I have survived many of things, and I am way more than what I have survived. Amen.
Toya, like look, I see Roz over there clapping. Let me tell you that I see some amens in the chat. You could say that again and again and again, and I had to pause and actually get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure I'm 1,000% there, but there were times when people will ask me, how are you doing? I think that's one of the cruelest questions to ever ask someone who's going through grief, right? And especially, just period. My loss is no greater than anyone else's loss. But when people would ask me that, I would get so angry and I would be like, my life sucks. And
Mm-hmm.
and it would throw them off. They'd be like, no, no, don't say that. Don't say that. Why not? My life sucks. Everything in my life has changed. My life sucks. And I have, Ross, I probably said that to you a couple times. I know I tell you said to my brother-in-law would be like, absolutely not. His whole demeanor would change. And then I got to the point where I stopped saying it because it was making other people uncomfortable, but I really believed it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't say it because I no longer believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Me getting to that process through that to that point because I did that boulder, that shift in my ecosystem. I was no good. I was no good. There's still moments I'm no good. I can't even. My sister got on me one time. She because I wasn't combing my hair. Which is why now I start to wear braids. And so she literally was like, "You can go to that cemetery every day if you need to, but my brother-in-law is saying comb your hair when you go." And I was like, "Oh, you know." Because here I am posting, my sister gave thumbs up. I'm posting, my life is over. What am I gonna do? And my hair all over the place. And she said, you can go as many times as you need to, but you're gonna comb your hair.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just I was stuck there. Like my life's so horrible. I have a horrible life now. And now I can say I don't have a horrible life now. I have a different life now.
Yeah. Grief is very heavy. And trying to, find our way just to manage the basic things. Like it is physically, it's emotionally heavy, but it is physically heavy. So the idea of, I know that's what people want to see you back normal, doing those things that are normal. And that's the encouragement. And so it's like, how do we help to get ourselves to a place where we can move, we can function, we can do all those things, but it takes time. It's not something that we have to rush to. Society will tell us we need to rush. Society will tell us hurry up. You got at work, you get 3 days or 5 days, and you're supposed to be back to work. And that's the expectation. We're not done grieving in 3 or 5 days. It takes time. And I think we were talking the other day, Cherita, and I was mentioning about the 3 to 7 year window. There's a lot of research that's going out on about that, the 3 to 7 year window of grief. And so and it's not to say that it's over in 7 years, but it's to say that these are the time frame in which you will probably move through most of the stages in that 3 to 7 year window. So a lot of people often stress because they're like, is something wrong with me because I'm not in a better place now. I'm feeling, still, really in a lot of pain, and struggling to get through my grief. No, you're fine. 3 to 7 years, is what we can really expect this to take. So, that it feels easier to manage. It's not that it's gone, it's just easier to manage. And that's it. So, yes. Anything else you want to offer, Cherita?
No, I'm sure when you start asking those probing questions, I'll start unpacking more. So I'm like, I'll just keep talking. So I'm gonna let you guide the conversation so I can stay on point.
No problem. The other couple things that I did want to share is that self-care is how we uh, tend the soil of grief of joy. So it's not just about spa days or bath days, although those are nice. Those bubble baths and spa days are nice. It's the moment you rest without guilt. The moment you say no and honor your peace, the moment you laugh after a hard week, and don't apologize for it. So it is that unapologetic ability to say, "Hey, I'm paying attention to me. I'm devoting more time to me and my growth and my journey." And so that's what it is about. Tonight is about remembering. You are allowed to feel good. You are allowed to rebuild. You are allowed to reclaim joy no matter what life has thrown at you. So, whether, like we said earlier, whether it is the loss of a person, whether it is the loss of a dream, whether it is you've lost other relationships, um, it is about loss, and that's what we're talking about today. So let's get into our conversation, Cherita. So, that's one of the questions I want to get started with is what does reclaiming joy look like for you today versus in a previous season of life? And I know you've had some different, like I said, we've been friends for 30 years. I know you've had some different seasons where it still has been ups and downs and some challenges. So maybe tell us about maybe some of the ups and downs, but then how this is so different now.
Yeah, so and when I read that question, I was like, "Oh, how deep does she want me to get here?" Um, but I mean, when you're with someone, this would have been Mark and Sharita's 35th year together, and so some days, just as I loved them, I wanted to choke them, on other days, and I think that's just the ebb and flow and the. I mean, he was my person. He was my person. So there were moments in this journey that he and I had together that just were those moments of complete bliss. Obviously, we have four children, and there were other moments where we were like, why did I have children with you? But at the end, I absolutely adored this human, and every piece of what I did and where I was, it was us, and so when I think about as we built this team, and our legacy in our home, things were, I mean, to me, those pieces were in place. I don't doubt for a second that God marched him through that business office at Lincoln Medical Center in that Kappa sweatshirt, looking just like Michael Jordan for a reason. I just know that that wasn't an accident. And there were just so many pieces on this journey that I just knew that he was my person.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are the moments that in this past next month will be 2 years that I have literally had to figure out everything. There's been no joy. There's been no authentic joy. There's been, I'll smile, but it's just a smile because I think that that's the appropriate thing to do. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not my real smile. And I'm trying to get back to my authentic smile. And that is my quest, that is my promise, and so when I think about somebody said to me on social media one day, I don't really even know this girl. I kind of was like, you went too far. But she kind of said to me, because I'm always saying, if I need something, I'm still talking to Mark. Mark, where is this? Where is this? Where is this? And she was saying, God is saying, ask him.
Mm-hmm.
Mark is not resting in peace because he's so worried about you. And that's who Mark was. Like right now, I can just, if he were here, he'd be like, girl, stop crying. So I'm gonna wipe my face and I'm gonna, pick my big girl's pants on. And I'm gonna trudge through this conversation. But that's just kind of who he was. And even if he was the reason for my tears, he was also going to be the reason for my smile following that. So, um, this journey, just as my relationship with him had its ups and downs, this journey has its ups and downs. And I am just trying to find a level platform so
Mm-hmm.
that I can begin to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I've been stuck. I've been unbalanced. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to find a level platform. And believe it or not, I'm beginning to lean more on the word. And I think that's where a lot of my strength is beginning to come
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question. You said you haven't found your authentic joy. You know, how would you, what does that feel like for you? How will you know, or how do you feel that you'll know when you've gotten there?
from. Right now, things are forced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a song by Jelly Roll. I think it's the name, Jelly Roll. I am not okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of the song that says, if you see me, it's just I've learned to hide it well. And that's what I've learned to do over these past 2 years is just mask everything because I'm worried about it making someone else feel uncomfortable. I'm worried about, Diamonds in the home with me. And some days when I just cannot, or if I'm crying, I go to a different space because I don't want my children to see that part of me. You know, I want to, I I put on a mask because that's how I can get through the day. But it's just a mask. I'm so voided on the inside until it's just the body of Cherita that's there, but Cherita's not present. So I'm trying to get back to when I am there, I'm truly there, that my mind is not in many different places, that I am present physically, mentally, I'm actively engaging in the conversation. I'm not just there and just again, just adding a little snippet here, a little snippet there. I'm being intentional. I think I heard you say that word earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting to try to be more intentional in my actions and in my conversations that I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do want to tell you too, I mean, I do hear you say like I'm asking, this because I don't want other people to feel uncomfortable. You're entitled to feel and do whatever it is you need to do. So if it makes somebody else uncomfortable, oh well. Oh
You
well.
know, but so here's the old Sharita, right? I see a hand. The old Sharita is genuinely a happy person. You know me as that, and many would say that about, that's who she is. That I would walk into a room and there would just be a light and an energy, and I really took pride in that. And it wasn't even forced. Just that was my mom and my daddy. My mama would talk to a street sign, and so will I. But now it's to the point where I want to get back to her.
Mhm,
My work is suffering, everything is suffering because I can't find my rhythm. So I'm just trying to get that authentic Sharita back so that my world around me can find some balance also.
mhm. Okay. I see a hand raised.
Hi, how you doing?
All right, how are you? Hi,
Good.
Rob.
My name is Miss Sharon.
Miss Sharon. Okay.
Oh, okay. We said two hands, but
Yeah,
go
we
ahead,
see
Miss.
two hands. Okay. Go ahead, Miss Sharon.
Okay, I was just wanted to comment on what she just said and just enlightening her. Sometimes you have to include the kids with it and let them know that it's hurting in order for them to grow because your loss is not just yours alone. They lost also. So you have to include them so that you can grow together and get past it together.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Thank you for that comment. Thank you.
I would say this too. I lost my son 3 months ago, and I mean I've lost people before, but losing my son was different.
Mm-hmm.
I lean on a higher power. I trust God through my process.
Mm-hmm.
So in trusting God through my process, it helps me with joy.
Yeah.
My joy would never look the same
Mm-hmm.
because it's the strength that God is giving me to move forward where I can smile. I want to also say this: if you have the right circle of friends and family, you might get masked up with people that don't know you, but with your true friends and your true believers and your true of circle of friends, they'll call you out on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they will let you know, I know your ups and downs, and they'll let you talk through it and process it. And I think that's what, when we look at joy, because the right joy and the strengthening joy through grief, to me, comes from God. And he will sustain you through this process that you're in right now, so that Cherita said something. I know her spirit too. She said something. She said, with joy, she might not fit. She might have to mask up, or it might feel like I'll just add this rehearsed. Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's part of, God might say, okay, practice it to make it perfect. Because sometimes we have to that's life itself. We have to force ourselves to do things because the way we are created in this natural world. Happiness just don't fall on you out of the sky. Joy just doesn't fall on you. It is something that we have to work towards. Mm-hmm. Now, grief and staying in the gutter and staying in that hole, that's what the enemy wants, and that's natural. That's why everything else we have to work very hard, put in the work to receive it the way God has aligned it for you during this season. So I'll yield right there. But it's just not going to say, ooh, joy, thank you. No, we have to work and work daily for it. So, and that's just me.
No, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. And I think, especially in our community, right? Religion is a big, it gets us through a lot of difficult times, right? And so we know that we can lean on God and we can lean on the word, and there we will find what we need there to uplift us and to hold us and to help us through. And so I think that is very much, what we, experience in our community. I also want to say this too, that there's 4 tasks of grief. And I don't know if anyone has heard this before, but the 4 tasks of grief, I do want to kind of just share that a little bit so that we have that. It is accepting the loss. Sometimes that happens really quickly for some people. Sometimes it doesn't happen for a long time. And so we are, caught in that place where we're trying to find some acceptance of the fact that this is a reality. And like we said earlier, things are going to change. Things have changed. Things will change. And so it's also accepting that change, right? That, the way things used to be, they aren't going to be anymore. And so trying to work our way through to a new understanding of what this newness looks like, and accept it as a reality, right? That this is truly what it is, that my life is different now, or that these changes have occurred, and that what joy once looked like, it may not look the same anymore. The second task of grief is working through the pain, which is what you just talked about, Roz. You just talked about, kind of working through the pain. And so, what I get, Cherita, too, right, is that sometimes we are, we're putting on a mask so that, and I've heard someone say this before, so that people don't even ask us a bunch of questions either, right? So they're not asking us 50 million questions. They're just kind of allowing us to just have our moment and to just kind of be, to experience what we need to experience, and not have people bombarding us with a bunch of different questions. Another task of grief is adjusting to a world without the deceased. So this happens, so I like to say, like, at the very beginning, everyone's present. Everyone is showing up, everyone's calling, everyone is, doing all the things, and then all of a sudden it stops. Mm-hmm. And now we have to adjust to this quietness, this change. Even, I've worked with some clients, it's I used to always go to these events, these functions, and my spouse or my partner was always with me. And now I've got to try to figure out what this means to go by myself. I don't even know how to show up by myself or to show up different. This is not, this is not something that I know how to do. I'm not even sure if I am ready to do these things, alone. And so it's adjusting bit by bit, slowly, to what life is like without the deceased, right? It's I got to try these new things. I think Cherita, you told me at some point, I gotta try to build these new things. You were telling me about the bat situation, like you would have called on Mark for that. Like it's all these things like new, like coming in, and it's like, oh, balancing the check. Maybe something in some, relationships, if it's a spouse, they're able to say, oh, he did all of the balancing of the checkbook, or he did all of, certain things. And now I have to learn how to do this thing, and it is hard. Go ahead.
Toya, I mean, like literally, like, ouch, get off my feet. You know, um, when Mark passed, literally my sister had to stay in my home for a month because I couldn't tell you who the mortgage company was, because those are the things that Mark handled. Now, some will say, stupid woman, know your household, how it's ran. Yeah, okay, sorry. That wasn't my life. That was part of my joy. So I didn't, but then I didn't know what to do. Talk about just completely shutting down. So when Roz talks about, my tribe, I have to laugh because, when I was in a whole nother state when Mark passed. And I think, what was it, 11 o'clock at night, God told you to text me, Roz, that, and she was like, for what? God, this girl sleep, and literally Mark had just passed and the spirit told her to reach out to me. But that there is that piece that I was just like, I quit, and that's where I wanted to be. I quit. I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't know how to do it. I am failing at everything. And my children were grown. Like, I don't have little ones, teenagers. I mean, they are grown. And so poor Diamond, that became my plus one to everything. Like, it's like she didn't even have a choice. Like, if she wanted to say no, I was like, why do you want to say no? Like, what do you have to do? Like, come with me. Daddy's not here. Who's going to go with me? But I didn't know. And so those were the pieces that I had to figure out, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And if my sister gave up everything, she sent her husband and the kids back, and she stayed with me in my home for a month to figure it out. And then when she was gone and the chatter stopped, then it just became, when I would have breakdowns, I've got those tribes that I'm calling and I'm screaming into the phone. I've got two cousins, Keisha and Shakita, that, I pick up the phone and I would call, and I'm going in. One's on her way to my house. And the other one, by the time we get off the phone, I'm laughing so hard, I got pains in my sides, and Roz would be like, are you in the game? Or are you not in the game? Like, tell me what's happening here. Are you on the court? You're on the bench. When are you getting in the game? So it was like those that literally knew, I'm going to meet you where you are, but I'm going to help you move a little bit further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was that window for me.
And that's what it is. It's just moving a little bit further, but at the pace that feels appropriate for you. It's no rush. you know but we want to heal. So someone, I have a few comments here in the chat. Ross says our village carries us. Cami says, when I lost my mom, I went out looking for her in people. She said, I knew I would see her face in people. That search, I think, was often not filled. Yeah, because we want to know. And that's the other thing too, we often look for signs. I remember having a friend, no, I remember listening to Tabitha Brown story about her loss with her mom, and she shared that her mom, she shared a story about this nickel, and I'm not going to quote it right. I'm not going to say it exactly the
Was it
way.
a nickel or a dime?
Maybe it was a
It was
nickel or a dime.
dimes.
It was
It
a
was
dime.
dimes everywhere.
Okay. And then it was dimes. Like that was a sign that her mom was present, and she was blessed to be able to see, just dimes would just show up everywhere. But everyone doesn't get that, right? So, and so sometimes then, even when people aren't getting that, they're like, well, something's wrong with me. I'm not getting this because we're looking for, that our person that we lost in somewhere else, in something else. We're looking for a message from somewhere to let us know that they are resting or that they are okay. And I think it's hard when we are not finding or receiving that message or whatever that message is supposed to be for us, right? That comfort. Yeah. Yeah.
I had there's a story about the wind chimes. I don't want to tell a long story about them, but I will tell you that my husband loved them. We were going to buy him wind chimes for Father's Day, and Diamond told me, absolutely not. Wind chimes, they're creepy. And we did not get the wind chimes for Father's Day. And a cousin that I had not spoken to in maybe 15, if not longer, years, when Mark passed, the wind chimes came to my home. I knew that was my communication piece. So you're like we're looking for, those signs. And the wind chimes stopped blowing. I didn't hear the wind chimes for about 2 weeks. I have two cousins that also lost their husbands. They're my first cousins and lost their husbands within 6 years, 4 years, and I'm going on 2 years. And so when the wind chimes stop, I'm calling them. I'm like, did your husbands did your signs stop? Because the wind chimes are not blowing. And I'm literally losing my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not responding fast enough to me. So once again, I have a sense of urgency all the time. And they weren't responding fast enough. And then I guess one cousin was just like, okay, it just took too long to try to type all this. And she finally called me. And then the other cousin called me. And both are like, he didn't leave you. And they talked to me about their signs and symbols as well. But man, when I come downstairs, I'm like, I better hear them wind chimes.
Yeah, we look for that. We look for that, like Cammie said earlier, that comfort in these signs, in these different things. It just helps us to remember. For those who want to remember, there are some people who don't want to remember sometimes, because remembering is hard. Before we get too lost, I do want to talk about this fourth task. The fourth task of grief is finding an enduring connection with the deceased. So and I think that also speaks to maybe the story of the chimes, but keeping, how do you keep those memories alive, finding ways to keep memories alive. You talked about Mark's anniversary coming up. Will you all do something as a memorial, to memorialize him or not? Some people find relief in that, or they find ways to, I'm going to join this organization or do that in honor of, or build this foundation in honor of. So it's, what it looks like for you, or each individual person in terms of, keeping those memories of your loved one alive. I remember when, so I said early on that I am I've met loss or grief early on in life. I had an aunt that I lost at 7, but I lost my best friend at 15. And she had cancer, and she had cancer from 6th grade, and she fought. She went through a leg amputation. The cancer would go in remission. It would come back. But I struggled a lot with that loss. And so I remember one of the things as a youth, just even trying to keep her memory alive, how I made the regular visits over to her parents' house to still, kind of keep visiting with them and having just that sense of comfort. And then participating in some of the different American Cancer Society organizations and those different types of things. So yes, so I have found different ways to, was looking for different ways myself to continue that memory, or to at least honor her loss, or in her presence. So I do see that there's another comment here. Jackie says it would have been our 11-year anniversary yesterday. So me and the kids looked at our wedding book and shared those pictures with all our friends and family who shared our special day. Yeah. Yep. So, finding ways to keep those memories alive, that is important. And especially as we work through that fourth task of grief. Um, so I'm going to ask another question, Cherita.
Okay.
Ready?
Right.
um, how do you hold space for both grief and joy at the same time? Have you found a way to hold space for both?
No.
Okay.
Not completely. Am I learning to do both? And so what's my why behind the no? Um, the guilt, my guilt, and I think that's the thing, just realizing that it's okay to smile for real. And so I think that I was stuck in a place where um I felt that not that I had to be sad, but I just didn't want to be happy.
Mm.
And I think when we were talking the other day, it was like I thought a lot about death, not about killing myself or taking my own life or harming myself. I just became overly consumed with death.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have to make sure. Let me go and make sure that I've got my space next to dad's. Let me make sure that everything is prepared. And I just became overly consumed with that. And I have to say that I believe hindered or has been the roadblock to me getting to my authentic smile.
Mm-hmm.
And um I know I'm jumping on one of the questions, but it was like, how do I what does the Bible say? If I'm trying to, somebody told me lean on God, and that I'm trying to get to Mark in a physical form, but I need to try to reach everything in a spiritual form. And if God is going to be the one to give me my answers, yeah, I don't always hear God. I want to hear him. I want him to say, "Hey, Cherita, this is me," because I don't want to miss the message. So I'm trying, and I don't know if he works like that, but I'm in some days I'm in such distress until I've been trying to balance both. So the guilt has been my wall or my barrier between that balancing act. So now I'm on the teeter where I'm heading up,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm feeling good about it. I'm finally feeling good about it. That I can just kind of exhale a little bit and let the teeter go up.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the guilt? What the guilt is about, for you, where you find yourself, where you found yourself, well, guilt holding you hostage, so to speak.
So I was in another state when Mark passed.
Mm-hmm.
Mark I talked to him on Tuesday, and he had shared with me something that was unusual in our medical journey with him. And I told him, don't go to work on Wednesday. I'll be home Thursday. I should have got on that plane and been home on Wednesday morning. And I feel that I could have stopped him from going to work, and we could have gone to the doctor. And so I personally feel that, I mean, it's hard. My daughters were there and I wasn't. And I had to call my village and rush everyone to the hospital to make sure that they were the bubble around my daughters, because I couldn't catch a plane to save my life to get there. So I get stuck there that my husband transitioned and I wasn't there. And something happened And he was hard-headed, but I could have got on a plane Wednesday. Why did I say I'll be home Thursday and this happened Tuesday? And I just think I could have done something different. But the fact that I didn't, that's where I get stuck. And that's where I can't let that go because I didn't try to come home Wednesday. I said I'll be home Thursday, and he passed on Wednesday.
So, I'm listening, and I know that that has to be like hard. Like you feel like there's something you could have done to, you know, get in between what happened and what the communication that you had. I know that we often hear, as Christian folks, that we don't know the day, the minute, the hour. We don't know any of that, right? About when life is going to be taken. And so, as much as it seemed like that, that time, the way that things happened were, controllable, would there have been something else in that moment that, because it was still his time, and I guess that's part of the question, to ask yourself, and maybe in going through that a little bit more, maybe you can find some way to forgive yourself, because essentially that's what it comes down to, being able to forgive yourself, because really you didn't know the day, the hour, the minute, the moment that it was going to happen, nor did Mark. He didn't know that either, no one knew. And so it could have been that he could have went to the store just on a whim. It could have been anything, because that was his time. And we, as humans, we want our people here as long with us as we can. And when it happens in an unexpected way like that, we just have a hard time wrapping our heads around it. But we always have to go back to, I think, that reminder that there is a timeline, that we don't know about, and while it seemed like he was so young and it's happened way too quickly, again, that timeline there, we don't know. We don't know how much time we have on this earth, and I think that's the hard time, because we always feel like we could have done something more. We never feel, it's often, as many times, and people are go in the hospital with their person and they still never feel like, I didn't do enough, or I didn't stop this, but are we supposed to be able to stop it? And I would say that there's someone who's above, who's saying, hey, I'm the one in control. I got all the power. I know the clock and I know the time.
As selfish as I was, and as I am, because there are days when I'm just like, I need you to come on back. And my sister would say, well, if he does, I'm gonna have to leave, because he can't come back, he going on. But I know that there were many moments. Like I said, he was diagnosed with heart failure. They did timestamp him, but it was early.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say, y'all don't know, we always expect God to give you more time, not less. But that's the one thing we always say. Can't nobody tell you that only God can control that. Well, we want God to give you more time. That's what we're saying. Them doctors don't know what they're talking about. They did know. And so the expectation, he came in half of that. He left in half of that time. They gave him 5, and he left in 2.5. If he would have had the surgery and had the pacemaker put in, possibly 7 to 10 was the additional time. But God said, come on. And I know that he was in pain. I know there are sometimes I would see him doing this to his chest. And now that I think about it, I know that ticker was probably bothering him. So when I think about that and I smile and think about my journey to an authentic smile, I think about that he's not hurting anymore. And as selfish as I am, that I got to kill my own spiders and figure out how to get those bats out. And Diamond, we figured it out, didn't we? And when I have to think about, all of those things that I have to I got to get an answer because he's not here to give me that answer. But I know he's in a better place. I think if he's seated, and I don't doubt that he's seated somewhere near the right or the left hand of the Father, please give that girl an answer so she can know what to do. And and that's why I can feel the teeter literally going on the elevation as opposed to just being on a plateau platform. So I'm feeling good.
I do want to share some of the comments that are in the chat. Um, we have Vanessa, um, who says, God makes no mistakes, and sometimes God makes sure that we are occupied so that we are not in his way.
Mm.
We we were we were where you were supposed to be. You were where you were supposed to be. Gloria says, I felt that way too, and I was there when he transitioned and thought if I would have been there sooner. Cami says, I feel as if we believe that we had our loved ones forever.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Gloria also said, I had to understand that nothing would have changed it truly. Uh, it was truly his time, and I had to accept that. Yeah. Jackie says, I am sure he would want you to forgive yourself too. Mm-hmm. And Raza said, God knows your heart. Yeah. Um, I do want to just also, touch on that piece of forgiveness, you know, really kind of walking through that guilt and walking through forgiveness, and forgiveness is not saying I you know that my intentions weren't to do something. It's just saying I'm gonna let go of this pain that I'm holding on to, because I know that I deserve joy, right? And I also know that Mark probably he doesn't want that for you. He doesn't want that for you. But it's part of choosing to let go of the pain and gravitate towards the joy, and just absolving yourself of the fact that this happened and you weren't able to be present, but you had a village that you could call on, and they showed up.
They showed up. They did. They were at that hospital, 50 strong. All I'm about to get kicked out. But
Yeah,
the girls had a bubble around them until I got there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, Here's another question. What intentional practices or boundaries have you implemented to try to help you protect or find joy?
Well, I think one of the things, as I said earlier, that I really stopped doing was just I had to control my own energy, right? And I think that is where I mean, like truly control it. Not hide it, not, how are you doing? My life sucks. I had to stop saying that, but I had to start believing it. That was the first thing. So, I mean, it's easy to just stop saying it because it was making others feel uncomfortable. But I literally had to honestly stop and say, okay, does my life really suck? Well, and some days that answer would be yes, yes. And then I had to pause again and say, I can like unpack it myself. And I found myself having more conversations with me to try to get me through this. I tried around something one day. Everybody got a therapist but you, Cherita. And I was like, so I tried, that route, and that didn't work for me yet. And so that was just the big piece is I had to change what came out of my mouth. I was my own barrier. And that was a big part for me. And then I started to be intentional. You guys know that I have fallen in love with my garden. I can't wait till every Mother's Day now, and this thing goes on until November. And that just became a sense of my own motivation because I really enjoy being in that space, and it gets me up. it gets me moving. And then I start to focus on other things and being more task oriented for the day. But I think my biggest boundary or barrier, Toya, was myself.
Mhm.
I literally had to gain control of me. And that wasn't easy because it was easier to just check out of the world,
Yeah.
to just literally, I don't feel like it today. I'm not doing it today. And there's sometimes I still feel like that, right? And I'll sleep, I'll sleep all day. Diamond came into my room one day and I just couldn't. I couldn't. And I get it. Some days, even moving forward, I'm just not gonna feel like doing life that day. And she's like, this room is just too dark. You got these dark green bedspread, your wall, these mirrors. We're moving this furniture out of here. And I heard her,
Mhm.
but then I heard her. And I realized that my actions, my children are also watching me. And so I don't want my energy to shift her energy, you know. Now she's not coming in there painting my walls and changing my bedspread, but I got to figure out how to get out of that bed every day. And
Mhm.
if I just put my feet down, I believe he takes it the rest of the way. And I've been my biggest barrier, and I'm just focusing a lot on how to get out of my own way.
Yeah. Well, I think you touched on something really important there. You talked about mindset, right? So joy is a mindset. And so it's something that we really have to wrap our head around, the way we think, the things that we are saying to ourselves, the way we are approaching life, and how that is going to cultivate that sense of well-being, that sense of happiness, that sense of contentment. It really is a mindset. And then as we are walking through life, like, what additional mindsets are we adopting to help us move forward, right? How are we speaking positivity into ourselves every day? Getting up, saying something inspiring or motivating, looking for something inspiring. Some people scroll social media, so I'm just like, hey, if you scroll social media, but maybe they're looking for something to kickstart their day on a positive, into a positive path. What can I find joy actually in stillness, because it allows me to go inward and to really just be reflective of my day. I think I told you, and I know I've told a few other people, that my first 3 to 5 minutes of my day are in stillness. And what I do in that first 3 to 5 minutes is I do some deep breathing, I do some meditating or praying, and then I set intentions for the day. And part of the intentions is, what is my mindset going to be today? If something comes up to try to take away, this joyful feeling or throw me off task, how am I going to get it back on track? I am, planning up front for, what might come along the way, but I am intentional about that. And I'm speaking that positivity into my day every day. And that's just a practice that I know that, and if I skip it, I know my day is, a little off. So that's just my practice. So it's finding out what practices work for you, to help you set the tone for what you want out of a given day, a given moment, and how you want your forgiveness journey to also move forward. Um, my Sharon, I think my Sharon, I threw myself into work and worked on autopilot for 7 years. Later, I almost cracked a real smile from the heart. So yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember too when my father died. I didn't allow myself to grieve. I was fresh out of. I had finished my master's program, and I was starting a new job, and I didn't want them to think or feel any kind of way about me taking off time, even though it's grief, but I'm a social worker. I was in the mindset that people think because I'm a social worker therapist, I got it all together. Well, I'm human, and nope, hey, I grieve just like the next person. I might not have it all together either. And this is when I came to 21st century, Cherita, believe it or not. And I did not allow myself to grieve, but I found it catching up with me later. So I had to then figure out, okay, I prolonged this whole grieving process by not allowing myself to walk through it, walk through the feelings, walk through the questions, walk through all the things, by trying to mask it. And I had to figure it out. I had to go back, I had to adopt the mindset. I have to forgive myself. I had to do all the things to help me to move forward and to find that joy.
The interesting thing, even in saying that, I'm like, I, you know, I did like the opposite. It was like I just sometimes I say, did I grieve too much or am I grieving too much? And then I'm like, yeah, no, I'm right. I think I'm right where I should be. Um, and I think when I became more overwhelmed by trying to wear this fake face, you know, like I said, I would just show up and I would be so hollow on the inside. I would get up and it was like, one thing that I knew was just Mark and Cherita had routines, right? And I guess that's the word that I want to use. Sometimes I would just show up because it was the routine. I would practice certain things. I would be ready for certain things. And hey, I would get up and I could jam at my work. And it's because I know the content. So I could do it in my sleep. So I didn't need to do any extra preparation for anything as far as work related. But I would be so empty inside and so cold inside. And if anybody asked me any questions that weren't in the normal realm, don't throw me off because then I'm losing it because I'm not ready for that. But I can flow through and I can get through the day. And I have a team member in New York, and that was one of the things that she would do. Like literally she called me one morning, and she's a social worker too, Toyia. So I like dumping on you social workers, man. I y'all out. I'm and she's a social worker as well. And so literally she called me one morning, and when I shared with her that Mark had passed, when I tell you that probably every single morning, that they're an hour ahead. So Eastern time, she was calling me at 7 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, let's pray. And I later realized what God was doing. Because I don't get up that early. And I'm sure not about to get up this early in the midst of my grief. But God was getting my day going. I got a house full of people, but that phone call every morning, Miss Cherita, how you doing? You okay? Let's pray. I knew that was just kind of get the juices flowing. Let's go. Let's get it moving. And so when I think about all these pieces that were kind of there and laid before me, as the teeter is elevating, now I can focus on a lot of these parts, and I can literally stop and say, He was always in the plan. He
Mm-hmm.
was always in the plan. I didn't see it, obviously not, because I wanted to be where I was, and that's all that I could give. Not that I even wanted to, it was just all that I had. But now that I really am trying to be intentional about some things, I can see when I look back, he was always in the plan. So,
Yeah. You mentioned something that I got to thinking about the routines. You had routines, and some of those routines have shifted, I would imagine.
oh,
Yes. Yeah. And so, do you find yourself, or have you found yourself creating new routines?
um, nah. So there's a yes and a no. And so what do I mean by that? Um, I guess the new routine is that I just don't do it, right? That's the new, like Cherita and Mark would get up. Like one of our obsessions was at one point we would go to swap around every Saturday morning. Like that was it. Swaparama, what you doing, Swaparama? And then when it got cold, then we became obsessed with Menards. I just wanted to go. If the car was moving, I just wanted to be on the passenger side. So it did, but it was that window of going.
Mhm.
So I find myself either doing those same things, like here I am now. My sister's like, what in the world what are you going to Menards for again? And I take my niece's words. Menards will tell me when I get there. So I find myself doing some of those same task because it's what I'm used to. I'm a creature of that habit. Um, and then I come out with a buggy full of stuff and end up taking half of the stuff right back. But that's what, like I said, that's what I'm used to doing. But I'm trying to, can I say that I've developed new routines? I'm trying. I'm
Mhm.
gonna say I'm trying. I'm trying to be intentional about doing different things. Um, I haven't mastered that yet, Toya. I haven't.
Yeah. And some of that's going to be, so things have changed. Now you have to experiment with some of these changes, right? And then as you experiment with some of these changes, what are the things that feel good? What are the things that bring joy? What are the things that bring happiness? And maybe making some of those part of your new routine, because you already talked about one routine, and that is you get up in the morning. You probably don't realize that you get up in the morning, you go out there and you look at your
Garden.
your garden, right? And so that is a new routine, and that is something that is bringing you joy. And though we live in this Midwest area, so that might not always be doable, but what are the routines that you can do, that bring you joy at those times, there might be new times, there might be times, that moments where you all shared different things. And so, finding some of the new routines, and how do I put these new routines in place that are going to help me find some joy as well.
I think the other thing that I used to really battle with, and I would say a lot, is I'm failing at this. I am failing at this. And I would say that, like I said, life and death, the power of the tongue, and I would be failing. And I couldn't, it just wouldn't work out. The cars would break. Because, see, the things were that things that Mark did. If the kids had a problem with their car, they called daddy. Don't call me. What? Call your daddy, And so now, Jade's car went down and Diamond's car went down, and I like lost it. And then I'm throwing money into these cars that should have just been thrown away anyway. And then I'm getting so much anxiety, just so much anxiety. And then I just finally okay, pause, Cherita. You got to figure it out. And somebody said, the teacher was teaching. I just never went to class. So some of these things that he modeled, I just didn't have the answers until I just had to stop and say, you're not failing. You're just learning things now on a curve, because you didn't show up to class. So now everything you're learning new. So the bats, Diamond came and said, Mama, these bats. And I just looked at my child and said, I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. And she at that point was like, okay. And we figured it out. And we're bat free now. And guess what? No car problems with either kid because they both went and bought new cars. So so I think I was beating up on myself because I was trying to do it as Mark did it. And Mark would have done it so quickly without even thinking. And I'm learning that I have to, number one, I have to learn it. I'm not checking out. That's never the plan. So I have to learn how to come up with these answers. And that's my new curve, is to try to figure this thing out.
And also to consider the fact that sometimes you don't have to have all the answers. I know you were used to Mark having the answers, and maybe he had the answers to many things and maybe everything, but you don't have to have the answers just because he had the answers. It's okay. And it is okay to figure it out. And whether you're figuring it out with, your daughters or other people, it's okay to have to figure it out, but to also give yourself grace when you don't have the answer. It's okay.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, yeah.
My poor son, Toya, you know, on those moments that, sometimes I don't want to call anybody, and when the moments hit, and then I would find myself, and that's why I was saying the mask. Then I would find myself, well, he's the oldest, and so he's the one I should be calling, and then I would just call my son, and he knows if I'm, and he's Eastern time. And so obviously if I'm calling at 11, it's midnight. So he's automatically answering the phone. What's wrong, mama? And by the time I get to the point where I'm calling my son, I'm already gone. Like, so my son answers the phone with mama in a rage. And I said, I've got to control this. I've got to get a handle on it, or I got to call Keisha, Shakita, or Vanessa, because I can't call the children because they're hurting like I'm hurting, right? And I just realized I was just like, I'm calling man, and I know that boy sleep, but I didn't care. I was calling him, and so I am. I'm glad now that when I have those moments, if I have to call my son at midnight, he no longer answers, "What's wrong, mama?" It's usually, and if I do and he does, it's, "Oh, I'm good. I'm looking for diamonds." So it's usually a real reason.
Yeah.
A reason.
Well, so Sharon, she shared that, and I think this is where I was asking about the new routines, or the new normal. Now it's not finding you; it's rebuilding a new normal, building a new routine, growing and knowing with God. So that's one of the things that she said, and then Rosalind, hearts, you in the game. I heard an amen. And then Sharon also said, figuring it out is called living. There is no guide, correct, to this thing we call life. Yes, 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 and yes. There is no, there is no guide. And we're all figuring it out together so many times. So we've been talking quite a bit. I do want to, give you a few moments to just, if there's anything that you want to kind of say as we kind of wrap this up. I will give everyone a reflection prompt after you kind of share that. So if you don't have your journal, I invite you to go ahead and do so. We're going to start wrapping it up here, and I'm going to let Cherita maybe provide us with, her final thoughts as we're kind of wrapping.
And just in reality, first of all, thank you so much, Toya, for thinking of me, to even have this dialogue. Because even like, I don't think I'd never been able to think of the word joy, you know, as this journey that I'm on. I always say finding my authentic smile, but like Roz said, that sounds like joy to me, you know. And I even had to when my sister was here before she left, I was just talking. I said, I need a new Bible. I need a new Bible. Diamond sleeps with my current Bible, and I didn't want to take it from her. And I was like, you know what? I need a new Bible. And next thing you know, that's that big sister. Amazon's delivering me a Bible. And when you and I were talking, I really went because I love the Bible that she picked. And I just went to the back and I looked up the topic joy. And of course it took me to Psalms a lot, because David loved to party. But so it took me to Psalms a lot. And so as I'm reading, I'm literally just kind of connecting. And I would just say, I can't tell anybody what Gracie, I'm talking. Go. I can't tell anybody the path to take or any words of incredible wisdom. All I can say is stay in the game, that when you just become, and maybe I stayed out of the game too long, before I realized that this was the thing to do. But I'm fighting right now to just make sure that every time you see a smile, I'm not hiding behind something deeper, that it is a true piece of me. And just stay in the game, my friends. Pray to whoever your higher power is, and just know that, I know now and I feel it, that when I lean to the left or to the right, I know God's got me if I'm about to fall. And those are just my words of wisdom. I have no real wisdom to give, but just stay in the game.
Mm-hmm. That is wisdom. Is wisdom, and you're speaking from experience, and so we are taking your words. Okay. Thank you, friend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, so we're gonna wrap up our conversation here. I do have a journal prompt, and I'm just gonna give us a few minutes just to, maybe respond to one of the journal prompts. Um, and so the prompt for today is going to be, what do I need to release to make space for joy? What do I need to release to make space for joy? And so I'm going to give you a couple minutes to respond to that. I'll play a song, and when we're done with that song, then we'll do our closing words and we'll wrap up. Now you witness the procedure. Change that. That's another life. I'm trying to undermine. If you are writing, I encourage you to keep writing. Um, I wanted to ask now, maybe if you could throw in the chat, um, what is one small joy that you can honor this week? So just maybe consider, like, as the week moves on and as you are, going to leave this space that we held together today, like, what is one small joy that you can honor this week? For me, I would say it is um, the small joy that I have is knowing that I am showing up every day and trying to move forward and move along the way and honor the people who I have lost. Honor, my dad, honor my best friend, honor those people, and that every day I try to show up as my best self, and being caring and kind to others. And in doing that, and helping other people, I find joy in it. For me, that is my thing for joy. Um, Cherita, your cousin, put a message for you in here. She says that she's very proud of you. You've come a long way. And to see you in this space brings her joy. There's going to be moments you reflect on the good, to keep going, giving up is not an option, and that she's here for you always to support you through the good and the bad times. She said, I got you. Life ain't easy, and this
Oh,
journey we are on we can only take it one day at a time. Peace, be still, and after you done, all you can do is just stand. Yes. Yes, yes. So Cami said, and this is I'm thinking the question I asked, showing up with my affirmations and self reminders to rid my worry to stay in the game at work. Yes, yes. If anyone else wants to throw in comments, I'm encouraging you to go ahead and do that one small thing. But as we prepare to end, the final some of our takeaways from today. One is exactly that. Stay in the game. Exactly what Cherita said, right? Stay in the game. Keep on keeping on, is what someone said. Um, Also, one thing that you said, Cherita, that I don't think you realize you might have said it, is you lean into positive self talk.
mm.
Lean into that positive self talk. Instead of talking negatively to yourself, try to, put some positive headphones on and speak and lean into that positive self talk. Um, One of the things that I encourage is to adopt the mindset of forgiveness, forgiving yourself. Um, we can't change what has already happened, and we can't undo what has already happened. So we have to allow ourselves some grace and some forgiveness, and adopt the mindset of forgiveness, and then find distractions. Right, find some distractions. What are some things that can help be good, positive distractions to help you find moments of joy. And so other people are commenting here. Um, Even if you don't know how to shoot or dribble, she says, yep,
Again,
the game. Yep, yep, yep. Jackie says she's going to work on her mental, physical, and spiritual self, as they are all equally important. Yes. And Cami said she agreed with the forgiveness. So as we are closing up here, I do want our final affirmation for today is joy is not what you wait for.
mm.
Joy is what you return to. And so sometimes you may have to even go on a little journey, right, to find it, but know that that is what you are returning to. Okay, so tonight was about us holding space for one another. Thank you all for joining us and participating, giving us your comments, whether it was in the chat or whether it was live on screen. It was received, it was welcomed. Um, Carry this conversation with you today, carry the takeaways with you today. If you haven't been on our newsletter before, you will get our newsletter within the next day. And when you get it, feel free to check in on our takeaways. And also, we'll have some other affirmations there and some other tidbits for you to help you continue on this journey. Thank you so much, Cherita.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And thank all of you for coming. And I see Amber down there. I didn't see her earlier, Toyia. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful that you guys just took time to just come and be intentional about even your healing. So I love it. This is a great platform to just I feel refreshed, you
Yeah.
know. I feel refreshed. And I think that that is part of it. It's just finally being able to just speak my truth and use my words that really represent what I'm actually feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's part of this journey. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me.
I thank you for being authentic. I thank you for being raw. I thank you for speaking your truth. That's why I asked you. Thank you. All right. Bye everyone. Have a good night. Travel with grace and mercy. Bye bye.
Blessings, everyone.